And to those of you who are watching on Facebook, thank you so much to the Diva channel for hosting us. And thank you to the National Student Pride, wherever you're watching. You're very welcome. And you are here for our Creating Space for Women panel. Hello. Hello, how are you? Saturday afternoon, cup of tea, wicked. My name is Juno Dawson. I'm an author, journalist, other things, and I'm joined this afternoon by some very, very exciting guests. Let's go from whichever this way is to whichever this way is. I don't know my left and right, so I'm transgender. Okay, on this side, try to get me to count as well, that's not going to end well. But on this side we have Chloe Davies from UK Black Pride. Hello. Next to her, we've got one of my very favourite pop stars. We have Millie Toomey, but you know her better as GIRLI. I'm loving that this chair swivels, and it's going to be very Basic Instinct when we get to the middle, isn't it? Straight down the skirt. Hello, on this side we have Tanya Compas, who's an amazing writer and activist from Galdem and from Student Pride as well. And also, last but not least, on the end we have Lady Phyll, who is, again from... Very popular from UK Black Pride, but also from Kaleidoscope Trust more recently as well. Is that correct? That wasn't correct in my notes, but the last I checked, your Kaleidoscope Trust, who do some amazing things. We are here today to talk mostly about how, despite maybe in the past, the efforts of women in the LGBTQ plus community, how the biggest figureheads, those who've managed to rise to the very top, traditionally have been white cisgender men. And therefore why we need special panels, special conversations, special spaces which amplify, raise up and support the role of women in the community. So I'm going to kind of start with you first, Lady Phyll. Beyond the obvious answer, oh actually no, there's one more thing I'm going to say. Bear with, put a pin in it. Clearly, this should go without saying, but this panel and all of Student Pride is fully inclusive of all ends of the gender spectrum. And for the purposes of this discussion, when we talk about women, we are fully inclusive of trans women, trans feminine people, non-binary people, anyone who wants to identify as a woman, that's A-okay with us, obviously, hello. See me here. But also, if your feminism isn't for all women, it's not feminism. Already my earpiece has dropped out, so if Jamie's in my ear, that's not going to go well, is it? Cool. So, Phyll, why do you think, historically, women have been, and I think this is true, I think it's fair to say, why do you think it is that women have been sidelined within the LGBT plus community?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for allowing me to be on the panel. How is everyone feeling? Do you know, I don't think that's loud enough. We're at Student Pride. How's everyone feeling? Okay, that's good. I feed off of energy. So I think that, you know, when we're talking about women being sidelined in the LGBT community, you know, the word that springs to mind is intersectionality, right? And people use intersectionality in a wrong way sometimes, and they make it sound like it's about diversity and inclusion. But when we're talking about women being sidelined, we're talking about misogyny, we're talking about the patriarchy, we're talking about structures and institutions that are so ingrained in how we work that often see women not as first-class citizens, but not just women. We're talking about black women. And I'm, you know, when people say to me, oh, you're always talking about black this, black that, hello, it's a lived experience and it's a reality of what black women go through just even within the LGBT community. You know, black women who are young, black women who are disabled, black women who are differently abled, black women who are of a working class background, different socioeconomic, migrants, immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers. So when you take all of those different factors into account that intersect with each other, there are those barriers of oppression that exist. And when those barriers of oppression exist, it means that people are not going to look beyond that. They're quite niche in their thinking and end up often isolating women in the movement. I think my own personal experience, and you're going to have to tell me when to stop, because I know other people need to talk, but my own personal experience is that, 20 years ago, spaces like this did not include our beings. I'm sat next to Tanya right now, a young activist, a queer activist who's doing some amazing stuff. Oh, we're not allowed to swear. Some amazing stuff in the community. But it's only because of those people that have come before us why we're able to have spaces like this. And this is why I say enjoy it, embrace it. But, where you said if your feminism is not for everyone, then it's not feminism. I think that if your movement is not for everyone, that comes from different backgrounds, that intersects in different ways, then you know what? If it's not intersectional, I'm not interested. And I think that we've come to a stage now where we're allowed to say, two fingers up to it. We're not playing this part. We're not being tokenized. We're not here just as a gesture. We are here to be heard, to be seen, visible 365 days of the year, 24/7. And if you don't like my being, then it's not my problem, it's yours. Mm-hmm.
And Chloe, do you think that's why we need Black Pride? I mean, it seems that we have that conversation a lot. Like, why isn't Pride enough? But presumably that is why, because there is still those levels of oppression and some people benefit from the systems that are in place more, why we do need specific spaces for women, people of colour, trans people. What do you think?
It's about seeing ourselves reflected in the mainstream. And so if we don't have space that's carved out in other organizations, and this isn't just for Black people, for LGBT people who identify under the POC panel, but also it's about if you're trans, we have a trans pride, we have a bi pride, we have prides that are to center the more marginalized parts of the community. So it isn't necessarily about why is there a need for a Black pride. If we are all not in the mainstream, then there will always be a need for us to have a space to center ourselves and to feel safe. So whilst we continue to need to have pride organizations, we will continue to need to have a UK Black Pride and a trans pride and a bi pride until we're all free. That's the reality.
I'm swiveling again. Hi. So we talk about these levels of barriers or where things haven't quite been designed for us, for women. Tanya, have you ever experienced these barriers whereby theoretically now this is very clear to me, is there such a thing as a community? And I think that's the problem. We use this word community. Is there a community, and have you ever experienced any barriers to it?
I think when it comes to community, it's kind of looking at what you deem, as you said, what do you deem as community? Because I think I didn't come out or understand, I don't even like coming out, because I didn't understand that I was not straight until I was 23. So after university, after everything, because in my head, being LGBTQ+ was a white people thing, and it wasn't for people that look like me. So when I kind of understood it, and I was like, okay, I don't have any friends. It's like when you go in secondary school and you see when you go in an awkward year, like year 10, and you move schools and you don't know anybody, everyone's got their little cliques and you don't fit in anywhere. I was like, I'm really trying hard not to swear. So I was like, oh no, what do I do now? And then I've looked, and I think via social media, I found Babes, BBZ there, Bold Brazen Zammies, and they're a group in the collective that centre Black queer people. And that was the first night I went to, and from that point, I saw people, and I was like, oh, these people look like me, and I wasn't even technically out then, I was just there as an ally. And I went there, and I saw people, and I started, making friends through there. But then it's like, okay, the mainstream of what you see in the media is, again, still very whitewashed. And it's like, you go into schools now, I'll do a lot of workshops and talks in schools and secondary schools, and I'll still say the same thing that I just said earlier, where I always thought being queer or being gay was a white people thing. And this will get their kids in the audience laughing and roaring, ah, yeah. Because for them, they still think it the same way. They don't see the fact that people can be anything, that they don't understand the spectrum in which LGBTQ+ people exist. And we're not a monolith where we exist in many different vast identities. And so for me, I always strive to I guess kind of create a space for young people, especially young black queer people, to find a community, because my community has been everything for me. I think when it comes to barriers, I think I've been pretty lucky, if I'm honest with you, in terms, I think social media has helped a huge amount in terms of connecting with people. I think Black Pride has helped a huge amount. Like I volunteered with Black Pride for about 2 years, and through that, I met many people, many young people, and that kind of gave me the position to find things. And I think I've been lucky where I found black queer people who have helped me on my journey, and I've always felt held by a community. However, that's also lucky because I'm living in London. It also means that I can pay for travel to leave my house. There's so many things that I think I didn't have as many barriers. I was working, I was 23, like I was older, whereas for young people, for young homeless people, trans people, people who are doing sex work, people who don't have access to even, to travel and to free travel, it makes it so much harder to find community. So I've been lucky, I think, where from the out, a lot of my work is kind of built around the fact that I didn't necessarily have as many barriers. I don't think I've been lucky. So I try and take away the barriers for young people when I create events and stuff like that, because it's not easy.
Thank you. And speaking of young people, hi, girly.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good. Now I'm going to tell my personal girly story now. I came to one of your gigs in Brighton about a year ago, and I was the oldest person there by a lot. I was like this husk of a creature moving through this, but it was so energized to see. Actually, it was a lot of students. A lot of students had come to see your gig, and there was this most amazing energy. And your lyrics in your songs are really unapologetically about what it is to be a girl in 2020, addressing the patriarchy, not in a coy way, in a really open, speaking about what it is to be a young woman and what it is to be a young feminist. Is that important for you, that isn't hidden, that's out there, and that is very much your message?
It's really funny because people, like over my career, people have asked me a lot, like, why do you choose to write about those things? Why do you choose to write about being queer? Why do you choose to write about being a woman and feminism? And I always just say, well, because that's my story. Like that's I write about my experience. And it was never like I sat down. I was like, right, this is my agenda. I have to spread the message to the people. I was just like, this happened to me yesterday, so I'm going to write about this. And that connected with people clearly, which is amazing because you write something in your bedroom or whatever, and then suddenly you realize, oh, actually. It's easy to forget how powerful it is just to talk about your own experience, and how people, sometimes you don't realize how much people need to hear that, just need to hear that, like, oh, especially young people, because my fans, like the people at my shows are pretty much all under 16, majority of them, and so they're in that period where they're just trying to figure their own stuff out and figure out who they are, and like you were saying, it's really, sometimes there's a real lack of representation in the mainstream, in music, film, television, news, and so.
Do you think, is it, again, I'm not going to swear, is it annoying? Is it annoying that as women, and we can all, I think, address this as well, that our jobs is not necessarily to be educators, and yet, as a writer, as a singer, as CEOs and directors and writers, is it irritating that we also have to have this second shift of teaching the next generation what it is to be women, what it is to be feminists? Is that because we don't get paid extra for that? And more importantly, is this something that men have to do as well? When people look at somebody like Justin Bieber, is there any responsibility on him to be a role model in a way that I think at various points we've all been described as activists or role models?
I think annoying is the wrong word. I think it's kind of more a privilege, really, because you realize, like, and like you were saying, how we have to thank the people behind us who made these spaces possible. And it's like, now we're the next generation, and we have to make it even better and more spaces available for then the next generation. And so it's, I guess it's annoying that we still have to be like talking about all this stuff, but it's there, and these spaces are happening, and that's amazing.
Personally, I was being a bit devil's advocate there. I'm always really happy to do it because I think when I was 13, I didn't know what a trans woman was, which is why I didn't come out until I was 16,000 years old. Because, yeah, had there just been one sort of trans woman on TV in the 90s, my life would have turned out very, very differently. And so when I look at those people who did come before me, even people like Nadia on Big Brother, I'm like, thank you for helping me to understand better who I am. And that's why, even though, you know, I've been attacked and I've been criticized and been harassed online, I will take the rough with the smooth, because if that helps younger trans and non-binary people think, oh, I could probably get a job in the media as well, great. But can we briefly talk about the word women with an X? It is not pronounced Womxn, which I've been doing all weekend. The whole theme of Student Pride this year is Womxing, carving out space. Why do we need that X in the word women? If just in case people don't know, Tanya, can I ask you?
I think when it comes to women with the X, is the idea, obviously, is the W, the woe, and then you got the men, and it's like, okay, cool, this is what we've seen it, this is how we've learned it. But I think when it comes to language, especially around like queer communities and stuff, it's something that we weren't born and we're told this language, you know what I mean? Like, I grew up and a lot of my language was inherent based upon the area that I grew up in, my friends was homophobic. And, you know, you have to unlearn all of this stuff. And I came into the queer community, again, not knowing anyone queer, etc., and having to learn all of these different, you know, the new words and new things. I think it's being open to the fact that women with an X is just more inclusive of women who necessarily aren't cis, straight women, white women. It's inclusive, a bit more political. It's showing that you're actually taking the care to be more inclusive, as opposed to just being like, just women with a men. I don't know. I'm not going to lie, a lot of language is changing all the time. Maybe in the future, women might be spelled with another, rather than an X, will be something else. But I think it's being open, also being open to critique, because I know that even when it comes to my language, it may not necessarily always be the most inclusive. It's not intentional, but it's just something that we've been socialized to have a certain, you know, certain words and certain languages. So it's been open to changing that. So right now, it's just being aware that women with an X is more inclusive of those that are not cis, white and straight. So be more, actively try and use that when you're doing, you know, just your promotional materials and stuff with work or with school or with uni, try and do that.
Anything to add, Phyll?
Yeah, so language is evolving, right? It's ever changing. I'm of a particular age where, I mean, I'm older than all of you on this panel, and I am. I just look really good. Yeah, but, you know, when I was growing up, even feminism, the word looked very different. So yes, I understand the ideology and the concept and why feminism is important, but I don't call myself a feminist anymore. I call myself a womanist. And this word womanist derives from, when looking at feminism in a critical way, it didn't include black women. And the lack of understanding of race and class and gender did not come through in that era of feminism. So there was a push. And the word womanist or womanism is about black women interrogating anti-racist and feminism, gender, patriarchy, all simultaneously. So I think that things will change, but you asked a really important question about communities, and I just wanted to touch back on that. I think that there is no one community. I think that there are many different communities, and it's okay to have different communities. You know, there's a young queer community that I am not going to be part of, but I'm going to support, and it's okay to carve out that space. There is a black queer community, and it's okay to have that space. And, you know, touching on what Chloe said, when UK Black Pride was created, it was created to carve out the space, and not many people know, but UK Black Pride started off as queer women of colour from an organisation called Block, which was black lesbians in the UK. And it was for that very reason, because we were not seeing ourselves in wider mainstream activities. We were not seeing ourselves in everyday parties, nightclubs, whether it was on TV, whether it was on magazines. And if we did see ourselves, it was in a negative way. So we started having the intergenerational conversation. We started having the woman with the ex conversation. We started trying to, even in the black community, understand what does it mean to be black and trans. You know, if we're not asking ourselves these questions and interrogating or critically analysing ourselves, then we're not going to be able to move past certain things, and we'll come back here and have a conversation asking the same question about why is it that we need to be carving out spaces. But yeah, I think there's not one community, there's loads of
And I think that's really important, because not everything has to be for you. And I think that's sometimes what the message may be, please again, stop me from that we need to pass on to white, cisgender, gay men, which is not everything has to be for you. And that's fine, and I agree. I'm so glad you mentioned class as well, which I think is the conversation that we never have, which is, you know, what about, you know, there's no good talking about equal pay for women if you're not earning any money at all, if you're unemployed and you can't access the workplace because you're trans. You know, these are conversations that we need to be having. Safe spaces, Chloe. In your mind, what makes a space safe?
Oh,
I know,
loaded question,
we're going in with the
Juno.
really gentle questions.
I think it comes in many folds. So, you know, when we're talking about a safe space for you as a person to relax, it's with like-minded people, knowing that actually who you are, your culture, your likes, your dislikes are embraced, that you can have that conversation. So from that perspective, you know, UK Black Pride is an amazing, or at least for myself, the last 2 years now is just family. Like, you know, it's amazing to be on this panel with family, and it's, you know, it's just like we're all just sitting together, and we just had a meeting a couple of days ago, and then it's nothing. You have that feeling where someone just makes you feel incredibly comfortable, but also where you're around like-minded people that push you to thrive and to be incredibly successful, and we are all successful and supportive for each other wherever we're at, you know, around the country, around the world. Whenever we see each other, it's just all love. That is about carving space, because that safe space is when you then see that next person. It doesn't have to be a building or a place. It's defined with people, you know, for me. I guess I have the other side of creating safe spaces for work, because that's what I do in my day job. So I'm wearing a very glamorous T-shirt. I work for my G work. I head up partnerships, but it's about creating a safe space where, as an LGBT person, you can find a job. So you can find a job and you don't have to worry about that barrier that you are LGBT, because everyone has already said, we don't care. As long as you have the skills and you can do the job and you're committed, then come and find that space. So I think it's on twofold, because we're inherent beings. We want to thrive, we want to be successful, but we also want to live and have community and have families and find friends. So, you know, for me, it's about all of those things.
And GIRLI, you are, I suppose, in and out of the nocturnal world of nightclubs and music venues, and it looks like, obviously, you know, when I was a kid, I just wanted to be a Spice Girl. I imagine the reality of it probably is less exciting and less glamorous. Is the music industry, the club circuit, is that something that is safe for a young woman to be working in? Is that something that's been, you know, we all, you know, I think the conversation has moved on beyond just #MeToo, but we like to think that things are improving for young female performers at all levels.
I think as a performer now, when I'm going on tour and I'm deciding which venues to play in, for me, I think it's important not only to choose places which are openly inclusive and safe for women, but safe for everybody. And I always try and make my shows a safe space, and how I define that is, you know, anyone can come through these doors. It doesn't matter your background, your race, your gender, your sexuality. Like, you can come through these doors and you can feel like you can be anyone who you want to be today, with zero judgment. And I think as a performer, and I'm lucky because I'm at this stage now where I can decide where I want to play and I have more control over the show. So I always make sure there are gender neutral toilets and that the security are briefed, you know, and that there's signs everywhere, saying if you see any discrimination, report it, they'll get kicked out kind of thing. But yeah, I think when I started playing, it was difficult because you'd be going into open mics or clubs where it's just a load of white guys with guitars, and you're kind of, middle-aged white guys with guitars, and you're there like, okay, here we go, and it's scary, for sure. And I think there needs to be more of an awareness, even on, because the bigger venues are catching up now, but I think even on the smaller, even pubs, if you host live music or events, and you have to brief your security, you have to make sure that, what kind of events are you having? Are your toilets gender inclusive? Or, things like that, because otherwise it can be really scary, and it can put you off from,
It's encouraging as well, and I get a lot of hope from working with young people. I think my book's, again, largely aimed at teenage girls. And what I love is that your audience and my audience seem to get it. And that gives me a lot of hope for the future. Sometimes when I look at a lot of, geez, Grandma. Sometimes when I look at a lot of pop music, I think, this is not for me. You've moved on, listen to your Adele album. But it gives me real hope that that generation just below me are way more open-minded than I was when I was that age. So I think certainly when I came to your gig, it was absolutely a safe space. But my next question is for Tanya, because you said as well about living in London. It's very tempting, and I'm sure obviously you've all come to London today and things seem to be based in big cities. I grew up in a tiny little village in West Yorkshire, about 20 minutes outside of Leeds. What happens if you are living in a place where there isn't any sense of a community, and has the internet, have things like Galdem created a safe space online, do you think?
Okay, just first clarify, I don't work with Galdem, I've just written for them a couple of times. So yeah, I'm my own youth worker. But I think in terms when it comes to, for example, people that live outside of London, a lot of my experience been working with AKT, which is a homeless charity supporting young people who are homeless or living in hostile environments. And this is not just based solely in London, but outside of London, outskirts. And I think that obviously being in London, a lot of things are naturally going to be London focused. I don't know, you have to actively learn how you can make events and things more inclusive for young people outside of it. So when I've done an event called Queer Black Christmas, which is for queer black young people who are either homeless or live in a hostile environment or just find Christmas period hard, I brought together around 30 young people, but I made sure I sectioned off money so it would be open for young people outside of London. So I had people come from Leeds, Manchester, Birmingham, Essex, Brighton, and a lot of them, and that was important for me to make sure it was inclusive. But I think that it's always important to remember that, if you do not see an immediate community, a queer community, and even if you can't be out and be authentically yourself outside of your bedroom walls, it doesn't invalidate your queer identity. And I think that's really important to remember, that some people actually can't exist as themselves outside of their bedroom, whether that's due to their sexuality, their gender identity, whatever it may be. And I think that utilize social media. So I've got a lot, I always know whenever I go do talks in schools, I will get a lot of Finsta accounts follow me, and there's often students who still don't want to be known to be following me like a loud gay woman on their thingy, so they'll follow me on their Finsta. So it's a bit more secretive, but they'll DM me, be like, hey, I saw you at school, this is my account, please don't block me. And I'm like, okay, that's no problem. But you utilize social media and connect with people and putting yourself in spaces, sometimes virtually, so obviously online, is really, really important. Just to sometimes be with people or hear things from people that let you know that what you're feeling is an alien. Because I think often you're put in these spaces and people will try and make you justify how you're feeling, justify why you feel uncomfortable because people are saying homophobic stuff, or why they're being transphobic or racist or whatever it may be. And I think that online spaces and online communities are so important for queer people. I think at the moment, there's a lot of talk around Twitter being like, oh, they need to make sure troll accounts don't exist, so everyone has to input their passport and this and that. And I just think that's actually going to severely affect the queer community, because so many queer people exist on these Finsta and fake accounts way before they even come out, because it gives you that language and it gives you that access to a community to really affirm yourself before you actually are ready to actually tell everyone else, hey, this is me. So I think that social media is really important for those that live outside of London. But I think it's also, as I said earlier, not everyone that lives in London is able to be themselves. I'm a cis woman. So for me, I have to think about spaces, are they trans inclusive? Obviously, I make sure the spaces I go to are, but equally I know that I'm not going to be put at risk by going to a space that isn't trans inclusive. So I think that, and even people that don't have recourse to public funds, people that don't have access to a lot of things that we have here, you always have to think about, even when having a discussion on safe space, no space is ever safe, if I'm being honest with you. And I think so many places are quick to be like, this is a safe space for everybody. It's not. And I think that as people who do create spaces, you have to be open to the fact of somebody saying, this space wasn't safe for me. No matter what your intention may be, you can't say this is a safe space.
And to not be defensive about that as well, which is the worst. When it's
you have to be open to it. You have to be open to critique all the time. I've been critiqued on my language when I've done a form and I said gender non-binary as opposed to non-binary. One of my young people emailed me, said, Tanya, I'm actually really disappointed because gender non-binary and non-binary are two completely different things. Gender non-conforming and non-binary, two completely different things. And I was like, you know what, you're right. And I was like, I said to the young person, I was like, I really, really appreciate you for saying this because it was their emotional labor they were giving to me to make sure that my work is inclusive for other non-binary and gender non-conforming people. They didn't have to do that, you know what I mean? But to have somebody be like, you know what, Tanya, I want to make sure your events are exclusive for everybody, that's fine. I could have led with my ego first and been like, no, what do you mean? Da-da-da. But it's not about that. The whole point is not for you to get offended. The whole point is for you to be open to constant critique. I'm constantly going to be critiqued. And that's what you have to be open to, especially when you're doing the work like we're doing.
Thank you. And this is a good place because, speaking of places which have been designed with keeping or putting women first, was Pussy Palace in London. And we were meant to be joined this afternoon by the lovely, lovely Munroe Bergdorf, but she's not very well. So after 3, can we all do a very big get well, Munroe? 1, 2, 3.
Get well, Munroe.
I'm sure she's watching at home and has been magically cured. Thank you very much. Last question, and we're going to have to whiz through really, really quickly, so I have a terrifying timer in front of me. It's like, you know, like in a Bond film where there's a bomb about to go off? That's what I'm sat in front of. What do we think? So I've noticed in my 7 years of transness that I've been answering a lot of the same questions a lot of the same time. And I imagine on this panel, I've asked you questions you've probably been asked before. So my question is, what can we do to kind of move the conversation on? What's next? And what should we be talking about instead of me constantly saying trans women are women, which I'm frankly bored of saying? Chloe, can we start with you? What should we be talking about next?
I think it's a responsibility for a lot of people to actually do a bit of their homework themselves, first and foremost, to then move on the conversation. If you're repeating the same things, you know, you're explaining your existence, you're explaining definition, that's what search engines exist for, to then ask the lived experience question afterwards. So I'm happy to have the conversation, but I need you to do the first 2 steps first.
I always feel terrible saying you could Google that.
Oh, no, I don't.
Well, maybe that's my... That's my next thing. I just know I need to be more bold with just saying, I think you can Google that. Thank you. GIRLI, what do you think? What should we be doing next? What's the next step?
I think just creating more spaces like this to where we can have open conversations, because talking just about our lived experiences is just so powerful. And I think, in general, there just needs to be more of a push. And it started already, but it's baby steps. But there needs to be more of a push for more inclusive representation in TV and film, in music as well, in media. Because, like I was saying earlier, when I look at young teenagers who are kind of soon to be the next generation of the the next young generation of the LGBT community, it's what they're seeing and where they're seeing themselves represented and how they're seeing themselves represented in the media. And, you know, I mean, what do most teenagers do? They watch Netflix and they watch YouTube and listen to music and, you know, and those are really influential. So I think there needs to be more of a push for representation.
Thank you. Tanya, what questions should I be asking?
I think that people just need to acknowledge their privilege, and this goes to everyone in the room as well. Acknowledge your privilege, and when someone calls you out for your privilege, don't feel offended and don't let your ego talk first. I think that we always have to look at, again, just because you're safe in this room, how can you make the room safe for somebody else? And put that upon yourself. It's not the job of the oppressors to teach it's not the job of the oppressed to teach the oppressors how not to oppress us. That's long, it's boring, pay me or not. Like, it's like, genuinely, like, you have to get paid for it. So many people, brands, companies, etc., expect our labor for free, and it's time-consuming, it's emotional labor, and it should never be expected for free. And I think that's really, really important. And I just think, yeah, I really want to swear, and it's really just F word, Google it.
So
like,
well.
Just please
We've gotten
Google
so
it.
far.
Like, take your time and Google it and put that on yourself. We shouldn't have to spend all our time saying the basics. Take it upon yourself to teach yourself. And if you're not, you can't say that you're really an active ally when you're not teaching yourself, because you're waiting for another panel to happen in your workplace that you sit through at your workplace whilst you're getting paid to listen to. Like, it's not work. Take the work and take it upon yourself.
And finally, Lady Phyll.
Yeah, so I've got -1 second.
We're good. Nobody's screaming in my ear yet, but it could
Okay.
be that my in-ear has broken. So
So I
somebody
think-
over there might be crying, but I don't know about it, so it's fine.
I think everything everyone said on this panel, but there's a word called solidarity, right? If you are not understanding that, you know, my struggle has to be your struggle and your struggle has to be my struggle, then we've lost the fight for, you know, to fight against injustice. We've lost the fight for equality. So I don't want to be sat here talking about racism. I want you, even if you're white, you're not black, to be talking about racism too. Whether you identify as a woman or not, I want you to be talking about misogyny, sexism. I want you to be talking about class, even if you don't come from that class. I want us to actually have that conversation about power and privilege, and who has power and who has privilege, and how to amplify what you have so that other people can reach a particular place. Because there's no point in us talking and talking and talking about this if we're not actually going to take meaningful action. So yes, we can talk about allies, but there's something called social disruptors. I'm not saying let's all go out and be anarchists, but I am saying let us make sure we put our money where our mouths are, and when somebody feels that there's an injustice to them, then we stand shoulder to shoulder, side by side, because that's the only way we're going to win the fight for equality for all of us as LGBT plus people. So it's solidarity.
Thank you all so much for kicking off our main stage this afternoon. And a huge thank you as well to National Student Pride, who I think, you know, they put 5 women front and center for the first thing, and that is the theme of the whole afternoon. On all of the panels, there is going to be some form of conversation about why it is that sometimes lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer women have been thought of second. So a big thank you to National Student Pride for letting us go first. It's not a big thing, but it's something. So can we please have a huge round of applause for all of our panel members this afternoon? Lady Phyll, Tanya Compas, GIRLI, and Chloe Davies. I've been Juno Dawson, and wait right here, because we will be right back in just a very few short minutes with more entertainment. Thank you very much.